3:00 a.m., Gulf of Mexico. My phone lights up with a text from my wife of 18 years. I'm leaving you, Palm Springs, taking all our money. A second bubble follows, a screenshot of our joint account showing $0.02 and a kiss emoji like she's tipping a waiter. I'm 52, hands still slick with rig grease, and I don't throw the phone, don't break a thing. I shower. I clock back in. 16 men depend on me not to lose my head. Then I send 3 words. Sure. Good luck. After that, I open an email box only 2 people know exists and flip the switch I built for the day I hoped would never come. Protocol Winter. 8 years of quiet preparation, one purpose. As generators hum and Gulf wind cuts steel, I replay the last year. Mystery transfers, black Audi, a personal trainer 25. She thinks I'm stranded offshore. She thinks she's ahead. She has no idea what happens next. I'm Jake Harrington, 52, born in West Texas where the wind pushes dust across the highway and men fix things before they fail. 27 years on offshore rigs taught me the same rule. Don't panic, plan. I started as a roustabout hauling pipe, worked up to supervising crews, checking valves, walking catwalks before sunrise, making sure everybody goes home with all 10 fingers. It's loud out there, but the discipline is quiet. Checklist, bolt, verify, repeat. I kept my money habits the same way. Simple truck, paid-off house, steady savings. Folks back home joked I was married to the schedule, and maybe that was true. 2 months on, 1 month off. You miss ball games, you make mortgages. Most men my age understand that trade. We do it for our people. When the 3 a.m. text came, it didn't just hit my heart. It took a swing at the part of me that believes in showing up, clocking in, and keeping the lights on. I met Krista at my buddy's bait and tackle shop in Odessa. She was 31, quick with a joke about city folks who think bass are picky eaters. I was 33, 10 years into oil, home between contracts and smelling like machine grease and cedar soap. We married 11 months later because back then it felt like we'd already done the hard part. We knew what we wanted. She said she liked that I was steady. I liked that she could talk to anybody, cashiers, foremen, old ladies in church pews. We built our life on little rituals, Friday burgers, Saturday errands, Sunday naps with football humming in the background. When I shipped out, she'd leave sticky notes on the fridge. Come home safe, I'll save your favorite cupcake. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. If you've been married a long time, you know, stability is a kind of romance. We thought we were choosing a simple life. We didn't see the cracks forming. We bought a 3-bed brick in Odessa, nothing grand, but the front porch took morning light just right. I paid it off early after a lucky steak and a small producer got bought, and I promised myself I wouldn't be house poor, ever. We kept things modest. 1 car each, no boats, no showy vacations. I maxed my 401k, kept emergency cash, and listened when older hands said, protect the downside. I even started a holding company, Winterlight, on my cousin Brendan's advice, not to hide money, but to keep our future from riding every market wave. We grilled in the backyard. Neighbor kids cut across our lawn. She picked paint colors I pretended to understand. If you've ever sat on a porch swing after mowing your lawn, you know the feeling. Sweat drying on your back, glass of tea sweating on the rail, thinking, yeah, this is what we worked for. That's the picture I carried offshore, through storms and night shifts. That's the life I believed in. Cracks don't start big. They start as hairlines you squint at. A forgotten birthday dinner. A friend's husband who's always around. The first time she said, do you really have to take that that Gulf contract? I told myself every family makes compromises. I sent pictures from the rig, sunrise off the derrick, a redfish a deckhand caught. Her replies got shorter. Cute. Busy. Then new habits. Different gym hours, always on the phone outside, a new black Audi in the driveway when I was home for a weekend. Loaner from a friend, she said, smiling like it was nothing. Maybe you've told yourself the same lie I did. Routine replaces excitement, but that's marriage. You forgive the missed cues because it's easier to believe you're solid than to inspect the foundation. So you go back to work, you keep the checks coming, and you promise yourself you'll plan a trip next time. Next time has a way of never arriving. Her closet changed first. Athleisure tags still on, supplements lined up like soldiers. Just getting healthy, she said. And who argues with that? Calls I couldn't place, girls' nights that ended late, receipts that didn't match the stories. I noticed transfers from our joint account, house repairs, foundation work, but the slab looked fine to me. If you've ever been out on a job and felt something's off in the vibration of a pump, you know the feeling. Too small to prove, too loud to ignore. I told myself to be a better husband when I was home. Fixed the fence, replaced the garbage disposal, bought movie tickets. The truth is, I was tightening bolts on a machine that wasn't failing from wear. It was failing from intent. The last week before that 3 a.m. text, my neighbor Harold sent a photo of a moving truck. Thought you should know. I stared at it, then closed my phone. Sometimes silence feels like strength. Sometimes it's surrender. Years back, I watched a coworker lose half his life in a nasty divorce. Panic sales, bad lawyers, sleepless nights. I promised myself I'd plan, not panic. Brendan and I sketched a contingency on a paper napkin. If the worst day comes, we keep the lights on. We called it Protocol Winter, after a cold snap that shut a rig down and taught me respect for quiet disasters. Winterlight Holdings was the backbone, legal, taxed, transparent, but separate. So after the text and the 002 screenshot, I walked to the galley for coffee, sat alone, and wrote one line. Activate Protocol Winter. No threats, no speeches, just a switch flipping inside me from hurt to action. If you're a man who's had to hold a family together through layoffs and medical bills, you know the gear I mean. It's the one that keeps your hands steady while your heart breaks. I hit send. For the first time that week, I felt hungry again. 3 minutes later, Brendan replied, "On it. Don't respond to anything until you're stateside." That's the kind of message older men appreciate. Short, clear, no drama. He laid out the first moves, flag the bank's fraud team, preserve cloud backups, lock credit, schedule an emergency with Thomas, the lawyer. Meanwhile, I still had a crew changing out choke manifolds and a weather window closing. Work is a gift when your life is unraveling. You count bolts, you call safety checks, you tell Jackson, my second, to double verify the pressure test because the sea doesn't care about your problems. At lunch, I checked email. Her attorney, Bradley, demanding spousal support and claiming I'd abandoned the marriage by working offshore. I smiled at that. Men my age have been called providers our whole lives, until the day we're called absent. That afternoon, a fresh Gulf breeze cut the heat, and something in me settled. We had a plan. Plans are better than feelings. The next morning, I skipped breakfast and walked the deck. Jackson watched me the way good seconds do, ready if I cracked, hoping I wouldn't. "Everything stable?" he asked, meaning the well and my life. "Everything's under control," I said, meaning both. You learn in your 50s what you couldn't at 25. Anger is a leak, discipline is a valve. I handled permits, signed off on lift plans, and kept my phone face down. The men need to see steadiness. Out here, a shaken supervisor is worse than a storm. At night, I lay in my bunk listening to the generator hum. I pictured her emptying drawers, a stranger wearing my college sweatshirt, my grandfather's desk going down a ramp. I felt the ache, then I felt it harden into resolve. I didn't need answers from her. I needed evidence, timing, and patience. Out on the water, patience keeps you alive. On land, it wins you everything that matters. By sundown, Brendan called with the first hard numbers. Transfers for 14 months, slow at first, $2,000 here, 3 there, then bigger bites the last 90 days. He'd pulled device backups too. Krista's new phone had been set up with my Apple credentials. Messages synced to my cloud without her noticing. In those threads was a name saved as D. Plans for Palm Springs. Jokes about me paying for their sunsets. Then a line that chilled me more than the empty account. If the bank freezes it, we push Plan B. He works a dangerous job. Men my age don't scare easy, but certain sentences settle in your bones. I stared at the steel stairs shining under deck lights and felt the Gulf wind on my neck. People think revenge is rage. Mine felt like a checklist. Tomorrow I'd finish the shift, book a flight to Houston, and walk into Thomas's office with my head up. She wasn't the only one with a plan. Brendan called while I was walking the catwalk, hard hat tucked under my arm. I've mapped the transfers, he said, voice flat like he was reading weather. 14 months. Starts small, 2 grand, 3 grand, every couple of weeks. I leaned against a handrail and watched the gulf lift and settle like a sleeping animal. Men my age know the pattern. A drip before a leak before a blowout. He read dates, amounts, merchant notes that meant nothing to me. Renovation, consulting, fitness coaching. I pictured her standing at our kitchen counter, tapping her phone like she was ordering paper towels. You sure it's not legit? I asked, because older men double-check even when we know. I'm sure, he said. Same routing number, different destination each cycle, then consolidated. The word consolidated landed like a wrench. That's not impulse, that's a schedule. I told him to keep pulling thread. There's more, he said, and I heard keys clacking. You won't like the next part. That night he emailed a simple table, dates, arrows, totals, and a sum at the bottom that made my chest go tight. $214,000. Not just the $142,000 from our joint account. This was bigger, older, smarter. I've seen men lose rigs by ignoring small variances. I've seen marriages go the same way. You tell yourself $100 here, $1,000 there is marriage money. Then you wake up and the math doesn't lie. Brendan's note was short, the way older men write when we respect each other's time. We can claw this back if we move now. Keep your head down until you land. I closed my laptop, stared at the ceiling of my bunk, and counted backward through paychecks, per diems, hazard bonuses, years of missing birthdays so bills got paid. If you've ever balanced a checkbook by hand, you understand the insult. It wasn't just theft, it was time theft. Hours of my life relabeled and rerouted. What else? I texted. He replied, insurance. Brendan's voice was careful, the way you talk to a man holding a live wire. 6 months ago, beneficiary changes on your life insurance. You weren't the one who signed. Older men know this file. You open it once a decade, update it, put it back. It's sacred. Your family gets the parachute if you don't come home. Show me the forms, I said. He did, and there was my printed name under a signature that looked like mine, if you'd traced it over shaky glass. I thought about every safety briefing I'd ever given. Tie off, buddy check, no shortcuts. Somewhere back home, someone treated my death benefit like a line item. Grief has weight. This felt like gravity. If you're a husband and a father figure, you've pictured the silent chair at the table. We buy insurance to make that picture survivable. Now it looked like a plan. We're preserving everything, Brendan said. Screenshots, server logs, timestamps. I said nothing. Silence had finally found the right target. The next morning I was on the helideck when Brendan said, there's a home equity line, 40 grand, drawn 3 days after approval. My mouth tasted like salt and metal. Approved by who? I asked, though I already knew. He sent the PDF, my name, my address, my signature. Almost. Forgers never get the right pressure on the downstroke. If you've ever signed title at a bank, you know the room. Little flag, candy in a dish, a pen that doesn't leave the table. I remembered the last real loan I took, truck in '09, and the manager who joked, don't sign your soul away. I stared at a forgery that tried. Funds moved to an LLC, Brendan said, registered to a familiar 25-year-old. The helideck wind pressed my shirt to my back. I thought about my grandfather's desk, the one I restored by hand, and where it might end up after a fire sale. 40,000 isn't just money, it's momentum. I felt the rig steady beneath me. I needed to steady with it. House repairs, she'd said 2 months back. Foundation's off. I can feel it when I walk. In West Texas, foundation trouble isn't rare. Clay swells, slabs shift. Older men know the drill. Hire a guy with a level and a long face, pay too much, sleep better. So I drove the loop around our block before my last hitch, looking for trenches, piers, anything. I saw a tidy lawn, fresh mulch, a black Audi I didn't recognize, and a porch swing hanging straight as a plumb line. If the foundation was bad, it picked a funny day to behave. I told myself I was being suspicious. We choose peace some days because the alternative is a war at the dinner table. Now, staring at transfer notes labeled foundation, I understood the joke. It wasn't the house that needed underpinning. It was a story. Men in their 50s don't chase every shadow, but we remember them. This one stretched from my driveway to a bank I didn't use. People think it's the money. 214,000 sounds like a headline, but I've worked storms that paid in overtime and back pain. Money can be rebuilt. What hurt was the patience, the way you boil a frog slow, sticky notes on my fridge while deposits bled down the street. Miss you, punctuated by a transfer. If you've ever been the dependable one, the guy who keeps the tires rotated and the taxes filed, you know how betrayal insults your wiring. It tells you your steadiness was a mark, not a gift. On the rig, the worst failures are planned by neglect. Skip one inspection, save a minute, collect your bonus, pray the next guy doesn't notice. This wasn't neglect, it was engineering. 14 months, thresholds just under what triggers alerts, beneficiary forms slipped in like coupons. The math was clinical. The marriage was sentimental. That gap is where men my age feel the tear. I pressed my palm to the bulkhead and let the steel cool my skin. Name's Devin Forrester, Brendan said. 25. Personal trainer on paper. No tax records that match regular work. The word personal tasted wrong. I pictured the Audi, the gym bag by our couch, the new vitamins lining the pantry like a parade. Men my age have met this guy before, at car lots, at parties, on the edges of weddings. He knows the right words for lonely years. You deserve fun. Why wait? Live a little. I asked for specifics because specifics save men. Addresses, exes, how long until he usually leaves. Brendan had them. 3 relationships with women over 45, 18 months average, a little less if the money runs out. I thought about my wife laughing at a joke I wouldn't get, paying for dinners I wouldn't eat, and selling my grandfather's watch to cover a bill I'd never see. Don't fixate on him, Brendan said. He's a symptom. We need the disease. I said, the disease has a schedule, so do I. And I meant it. Brendan isn't dramatic. He's a CPA. But his screen share made my neck hairs lift. News blurbs, court filings, social posts, different towns, similar captions. A smiling 20-something beside a midlife woman glowing like she'd found summer in November. Then the fades. Comments closed. Profiles wiped. One case had something darker tucked into footnotes. A single paragraph about an ex-husband's accident 6 weeks after divorce papers. No charges, just questions. If you're over 50, you've stood at enough funerals to recognize phrasing that dodges truth. He worked a dangerous job, one message in my cloud said, like risk equals permission. That line turned the air thin. I remembered all the times I triple knotted a harness and told a 20-year-old to do it again. We honor danger by refusing to be casual with it. Devin had made danger casual. We'll hand this to Thomas, Brendan said. He'll know what sticks in court. I nodded at the camera. I wasn't shaking. The rig hummed. So did I. The bank freeze bought us time, and time reveals plans. Brendan flagged 2 one-way tickets to Palm Springs. Tuesday, 3 days out. Departure at 10:40 a.m., just long enough for breakfast selfies and a goodbye tour through my checking account if the hold lifted. I pictured their suitcase wheels rolling over my doorway threshold, a goodbye note to the life they were taking. If you've ever watched someone pack your house without asking, you know the clean kind of rage that follows. It doesn't scream, it tallies. Thomas scheduled an emergency hearing. The sheriff could serve papers at the door before wheels went up. You want to be there? Brendan asked. Older men know the power of showing up at the right minute. Yes, I said, but not as a scene, as a witness. We set alarms, stacked documents, printed screenshots twice. Palm Springs is pretty in postcards. I wanted them to taste paperwork instead. Thick, official, undeniable. The kind of paper that stops motion. I decided not to tip my hand. No texts, no calls. Let her believe I'm 6,000 miles away, sweating under fluorescent lights and trusting her to pay the water bill. Men in my bracket understand camouflage, keep routine, move pieces. I finished the rotation, signed my shift log, and handed Jackson the board like any other day. You good? He asked. I'm fine, I said, and for the first time it felt like a plan, not a lie. Brendan booked my flight to Houston under initials. Thomas cued the motions. Harold agreed to let me watch from his living room across the street when the deputies arrived. If you've ever set a fence post, You know the satisfaction of dropping it into concrete. Straight, true, ready to carry weight. That's what this felt like. They thought I was stranded at sea. I was arriving on land. And when the doorbell rang at 8:55 a.m., it wouldn't be a surprise party. It would be gravity, finally catching up. I landed in Houston bone-tired but clear. Older men know that airport walk. Head up, shoulders square, no need to rush because the real race already started. Brendan met me at the curb in a dusty Silverado, gave me a quick nod, and we moved like we'd practiced. He handed me a ball cap, sunglasses, and a plain hoodie that didn't say a word about me. "No stops," he said. We drove I-45 with the windows cracked, the city breathing warm air that smelled like rain and asphalt. Men my age have come home from storms before. Hurricanes, layoffs, funerals. You move toward the office that can help, not the house that can't. Brendan summarized while I watched exits flick by. Bank holds are active. We preserve device logs. Thomas is ready. He pressed a small phone into my palm. Use this for everything until we're done. I turned it over, heavy and anonymous. That's when it hit me. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was advancing. At Brendan's office, the lights were low and the coffee was strong. He slid a manila folder across the desk with my name written like a verdict. Inside were clean printouts, Winterlight corporate filings, tax confirmations, bank attestations, each page a brick in a wall I'd started years ago. "This is the spine," he said. "It shows you didn't hide, you planned." Older men keep paper for moments like this. We don't trust links, we trust stamps. Brendan set the folder beside a brand new flip phone, simpler than a toaster. "No apps, no surprises," he said. "We'll keep your regular phone off except for evidence." We ran a checklist: credit locks, fraud alerts, account recovery keys. It felt like battening down a house before a storm. You can't stop the wind, but you can keep the roof on. He looked me in the eye. "From here, Thomas leads." I pocketed the burner, palmed the folder, and felt my heartbeat settle into something like faith. Thomas's office smelled like leather and printer ink, the kind of place where outcomes are decided by commas and timing. He's in his late 50s, silver hair, the calm of a man who has seen the worst versions of people and still believes in paperwork. "Here's our route," he said, pulling a pad close. "Emergency injunctions, asset freezes, criminal complaints for forgery, and a motion to dismiss any protective order she's trying to pull." He speaks like a foreman reading a lift plan. No drama, just load, angle, limit. Older men appreciate that cadence. He asked for my answers in complete sentences. I gave them. Dates, trips, badges. "We'll file within hours," he said. "You'll act surprised if served. As far as she knows, you're still offshore." He tapped the desk twice, a gavel without the robe. "We're not just defending, we're positioning." Positioning. Men who've run crews know the word. You put the weight where it belongs, then you make sure it doesn't shift. We started with the arteries, money first. Thomas drafted a motion to freeze any account she'd touched in the last 90 days, then widened the net to the LLC tied to Devon. Each paragraph carried exhibits, bank statements, transfer schedules, routing numbers. He attached a criminal complaint for the forged HELOC, 2 signatures side by side like a before and after of honesty. "We'll walk these into the clerk," he said. "If you're over 50, you've learned to respect clerks. They know the levers." While his paralegal assembled packets, Thomas dictated like a surgeon, precise, unhurried, certain. My job was to stay still and answer only when asked. I thought about bolts torqued to spec. Too loose and you bleed, too tight and you snap. This was the right torque. When he finished, he slid the stack my way. Initial here, here, and here. I signed my real name with my real hand. It felt good to put ink where lies had tried to live. Thomas's phone buzzed. He listened, then exhaled through his nose the way men do when bad news is expected. "Her lawyer filed a domestic violence claim this morning," he said. "Emergency hearing requested. They'll ask for exclusive use of the house and a no-contact order." I felt that old heat rise and forced it down like a stubborn flame. Men my age have learned anger is easy, precision is power. "I've been offshore for 7 weeks, I said. "Exactly," Thomas nodded. "It's a tactic, We'll meet it head on. I pictured my living room with strangers in it, my tools in cardboard, my grandfather's desk pried from its corner, and my name used like a weapon against me. That's the part that catches in a man's throat, not accusation, but inversion. We file to dismiss with evidence, Thomas said, already writing. And we make it swift. He looked up. This could backfire on them hard. I leaned back and let the chair hold the weight. Thomas gathered proof the way you gather wrenches before a job, every size you might need. We'll submit badge logs from the platform, continuous access for 7 weeks, he said. Add passport stamps for entries and exits, plus flight manifests. It sounded almost quaint to rely on stamps and swipes in an age of screenshots, but older men trust the click of a turnstile more than a cloud. He called my company's security office, confirmed retention policies, requested certifications. Then he asked for my phone records, just the metadata, no content needed, to show calls were sparse and civil. Let them say abuse while the calendar says absence, Thomas murmured. It was the kind of line a judge remembers. He highlighted dates with a yellow marker, built a timeline you could read like a tape measure. This is your spine, he said. It holds up every other claim. I nodded, because every rig has a central column. Take it down, and everything else buckles. By late afternoon, the evidence was stacked like lumber. Company credentials showed my badge pinging checkpoints, 2 to 3 times a shift, the way life on a platform writes its own diary. Mess hall, control room, tool crib. My passport told the same story. Customs ink in tidy rows, a government's way of saying where you were and weren't. Phone logs backed it up. Brief calls, nothing heated. Gaps that matched my rotations. Thomas's paralegal laid the pages side by side on a long conference table until my absence filled the room like a map of nowhere near her. Men in their 50s appreciate straightforward pictures. You don't argue with a level bubble or a GPS ping. This isn't just proof, Thomas said. It's a narrative a judge can believe in one read. He clipped the bundle, tapped it even, and smiled without showing teeth. Now we give them enough rope. I looked at the stack and decided to stop taking this personally. We were building. Brendan joined by video, face lit by the glow of bad news. She set up her new phone with your Apple ID a year ago, he said. Never changed the password. Everything syncs to your cloud. Older men like paper, but we know a gift when we see it. He shared his screen, messages between Krista and a contact saved as D, Palm Springs listings, private jokes about me working while they live, and instructions on how to push me into verifying the frozen transfer. I didn't read every word. I scanned like I scan gauges, looking for the needle in the red. We'll have chain of custody on this? Thomas asked. Yes, Brendan answered. Pulled through your account, logged, time-stamped. The chat bubbles kept sliding up like a slot machine paying out in confessions. Save everything, I said. I wasn't shaking. I felt the same quiet I feel before a lift. Breath low, hands steady, eyes on the load. The truth was heavy and finally ours. The line appeared in gray text that might as well have been blood red. Krista. Bank froze the money. Need miles to verify. D. He's offshore 10 more days. Tell him your mom's sick. Get authorization. Krista. He's not answering. D. Try harder, or we look at plan B. It's just insurance money. He works a dangerous job. I felt each word seat itself deep, like bolts torqued to failure. Men who work around steel and pressure know euphemisms are where disasters hide. Plan B wasn't a backup. It was a door they were willing to open if the first one stuck. Thomas circled the line with a pen. This reframes everything, he said. It moves us from divorce tactics to potential conspiracy. Brendan took a screenshot, then another, then exported the whole thread like he was rescuing a black box from a crash. I closed my eyes and pictured the rig at night, a city of lights on a dark sea, and understood exactly what they were gambling. I don't say the word lightly, and older men don't throw it around. But when someone treats your life like a payout, your mind walks to a dark fence line. That afternoon, Thomas's research assistant slid a file across the table. You should see this, she said. A previous case, another woman, another town, where the ex-husband drove off a familiar road 6 weeks after papers were filed. No charges, just whispers. Devin's name floated near the margins as a person of interest. then vanished. You can't build a criminal case on whispers, but you can build a sense. I felt the room tilt, then right itself. "We don't chase ghosts," Thomas said softly. "We build what holds." Still, a sentence had formed in me that wouldn't leave. Devin isn't just a moocher. He might be something worse. The climax of that thought wasn't fear. It was resolve. If they planned for accidents, I would plan for daylight. Accidents hide. Daylight doesn't. Brendan dug through public records like a man prying nails from old lumber. Slow, steady, no splinters if you're careful. He found 3 relationships in 5 years that ended with the same echo: depleted accounts and quiet profiles. In one, a local paper tucked a paragraph into page 2 about that crash on a switchback road. No alcohol detected, weather clear, investigation ongoing. Men over 50 read that and hear what isn't said. Devin was never charged, and that matters. But patterns matter too, and Thomas underlined them in blue. "We're not proving a crime here," he said. "We're showing risk, motive, and character. Judges understand patterns." I thought about every timesheet I'd ever signed, each box a small truth that, taken together, proves a month. That's how this felt. Boxes, totals, a story that adds up even if one page goes missing. "Get me certified copies," Thomas told Brendan. "Yes, sir," Brendan said. Older men still answer like that when the job is serious. Back at Brendan's place, my regular phone lit up with Krista's name. I let it roll to voicemail and pressed play on speaker. "Miles," she said, my name as if it still belonged to us. "Please call the bank. They froze everything by mistake. I was moving it into a safer investment like we talked about. I can't pay the mortgage. I'm scared." Her voice cracked at the right places. I would have bought it 2 weeks earlier. Older men know that ache, when a familiar voice tries to borrow your better self. Brendan didn't say a word. Thomas didn't either. We just let the message sit between us like a snake we weren't going to touch. I saved it, assigned it a tag, and put the phone face down. Compassion and compliance are different things. I could still feel sorry for who we used to be while refusing to sponsor who we'd become. "We move at 9 tomorrow, Thomas said. "Be ready." At dawn, we pulled up the Odessa security feed I'd installed years ago and quietly maintained. The backyard camera showed my pool, my chairs, my whiskey bottle sweating on the patio table. Then Devin walked into frame wearing my old college sweatshirt like a trophy from a game he didn't play. He put his feet up on the cedar bench I'd built with my hands. Krista paced nearby, talking into a phone, hair twisted tight, a look I knew, the look of a plan losing altitude. If you're an older man who builds things, you understand that jab in the ribs when something you made is handled careless. I didn't rage. I took notes, timestamps, items visible, people present. Thomas captured stills. Brendan logged them. Evidence is better than anger. A mockingbird landed on the fence and cocked its head at the scene like it couldn't figure the species. Neither could I. But the camera could. It just kept telling the truth. Harold texted, "Trucks came twice, big ones tomorrow." He's an old oil hand, knows when to say little and when to say nothing. I wanted to drive across town and end it with volume. Older men also know the cost of that move. You win the argument, lose the case. I sipped black coffee that had gone cold, breathed through my nose, and repeated the word that keeps men safe around heavy loads: wait. Thomas reviewed our stack again, looking for hairline gaps. Brendan scheduled time with the bank's fraud unit, the kind of folks who don't smile much because their workday is a parade of almost disasters. We set alarms, printed extras, packed folders in order: freeze, forgery, dismissal, divorce. I can't say I slept, but I lay still enough to count my breaths. Out on the rig, we call it standby, ready hands, quiet feet, eyes forward. That's where I put myself, not passive, primed. By noon, everything was queued. Deputies notified, court officer assigned, sheriff's window set. Thomas suggested I stay downtown and let papers do the work. Older men hear good advice and sometimes walk past it because a different need speaks up. "I want to watch from Harold's," I said. "No words, no stunts. I need to see it land." There's a kind of closure that never comes through someone else's description. You've got to witness the truth you paid for. Thomas held my stare a beat, then nodded. "You stay invisible until the serve," he said. "Then step out when I signal. Let the documents talk. Brendan tossed me a set of keys. Back door. Lights stay off. We drove I-10 toward Odessa with the sun dropping and long shadows running beside us like company. At Harold's, he met me with a quiet handshake. No speeches. He pointed to the window with the best angle on my front door. "We'll know soon," he said. I took my seat. Odessa at night smells like dust and diesel, the kind of air older men know from late shifts and long drives. Harold met me at his side door with the porch light off. He's a retired oil hand, the kind who speaks in nods. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. He set a mug of black coffee on the counter and pointed toward the front room where the blinds were tilted just enough to make a slit. "You'll see what you need," he said. From his window, my house looked smaller, like distance had shrunk it, or truth had. A single floor lamp burned in the living room. Shadows crossed the walls, fast, purposeful, not like home. Harold handed me a pair of binoculars faded from years in a truck. 2 trucks today, more in the morning. I wrapped my fingers around the worn grip, found my front door in the glass, and made a quiet promise that felt like steel. I will leave with what's mine. We watched like hunters who'd put away their rifles, silent, still, counting. First truck backed up to the curb, box door rattling open. The movers carried out furniture I'd chosen with calluses on my knuckles. The oak table I sanded twice, the cedar bench I lined up straight against the brick. Devon flickered in and out of frame, wearing my sweatshirt again, sleeves pushed high, a man borrowing another man's life. Krista moved differently, tight, brisk, clipboard in hand like she owned the checklist. Older men know that clipboard. It's how you make theft look like management. Harold didn't comment. He kept time like a metronome, 8:12, 8:29, 8:51, every item another minute of a marriage walking down a ramp. I took pictures without shaking, lens pressed to glass so it wouldn't flash. When the second truck pulled away, the porch light snapped off. The house sat dark and hollow like a molted shell. I didn't rage. I wrote down license plates. The climax was patience. Thomas texted at dawn. Found listing docs. A PDF followed with my name under a signature that tried too hard to be mine. If you've ever signed at a title office, you can feel the lie just looking. The strokes were right. The pressure was wrong, like someone traced me and missed my weight. The listing price sat 30% below market, the kind of number you use when you're sprinting and don't plan to look back. "We've filed to nullify," Thomas said on speaker. "Court officer will bring it." I stared at the legal description of my own home, retyped by a stranger, and felt a heat I hadn't allowed all week. Not anger, accuracy. Selling a man's house under his name stabs deeper than taking his cash. The house is me becomes the math. Harold slid a legal pad to me. "Write what you want back first." I wrote 3 things in block letters. Desk, watch, photos. Then I underlined desk until the paper thinned. Sunrise hit brick and exposed what night conceals. The last-minute grabs. Devon came out first, carrying my grandmother's silver frames, balanced careless on a folded hoodie. He set them on the hood of the black Audi, the car I had never seen, now perched like a crow in my driveway. Krista followed with a jewelry box I recognized by the squeak it made when it closed. Older men know sounds as well as sights. A home has its own music. A mover hoisted my grandfather's desk, 2 men on the sides, one guiding from the back. They tilted it wrong. I felt my jaw go tight. Harold's hand hovered near my forearm, not touching, just reminding. "We're almost there," he said. Across the street, a woman with a clipboard, realtor I figured, took wide shots with her phone as if haste could crop out guilt. I lifted the binoculars and set the crosshairs on the front door. 8:45, 10 minutes to schedule, 10 to truth. Punctual men run the world you don't read about. At 8:55, an unmarked sedan rolled in behind the moving truck and parked tight, boxing it like a steer in a chute. 2 deputies stepped out, one older, one young enough to be my son, and a woman in a navy suit who carried a portfolio with corners that didn't bend. Thomas texted, "Going to door." The older deputy adjusted his belt the way men do before work matters. He rang the bell, not hard, not soft. Official. From Harold's window, I watched Krista open the door, mouth forming words I'd heard 1,000 times at supper and never like this. The younger deputy held a stack thick enough to make a sound when you set it down. The court officer didn't smile. She doesn't for weddings either. My phone buzzed once. Stand by. I rounded my shoulders back and breathed the way I do before a long lift. This was the shift bell. We were on. Thomas's text came crisp. Now. I set the binoculars down, wiped my palms on my jeans, and followed Harold out the side door. The walk across asphalt felt longer than it was, like time had to stretch to make room for the moment. I didn't raise my voice or my chin. Older men know the power of presence at the right distance. The deputies clocked me with a glance, and the court officer's eyes did the math. Badge logs, flight manifests, the man behind the paperwork. I stopped at the edge of my driveway where the light cut a clean line and let them see me. Krista turned first, then froze like she'd walked into winter. Devon's hand loosened on her shoulder. For weeks I had been a rumor to them, a problem at sea. Now I was a fact on concrete. The breeze shifted, carrying the smell of cut grass and cold nerves. I didn't speak. That was the point. I was gravity arriving. Krista's face traveled a road I recognized. Annoyance, confusion, then calculation. She put a hand to her chest like she'd been startled in a haunted house, a motion so practiced it looked rehearsed. Devon's expression did something different. Blank first, then narrowing, cataloging exits, measuring whether charm would still spend. Men my age have watched that look on job sites when a shortcut gets spotted. The older deputy shifted slightly to put himself between us without making it a stance. The younger one held the papers like a book he was about to read. Harold stood back, shoulder to shoulder with the life I'd built. In moments like this, silence ranks. The court officer cleared her throat. "Mrs. Harrington?" Krista nodded, chin high now, reclaiming a stage she thought she owned. "We're here to serve emergency orders," the officer said. I watched the words land. Titles mean less than tone. This tone said the weather had changed and umbrellas wouldn't help. I let them feel it. Krista whispered, "You're supposed to be offshore." I let a beat pass so the line could die on its own. "Surprise," I said, calm as a level bubble. Older men know that one word can carry more than a speech. It's the sound of a plan closing. Devon shifted his weight like a boxer reconsidering distance. I kept my hands visible and my voice low. Let the officers do their job. Not for them, for me. This wasn't a movie. It was the part where you stay eligible for the ending you want. The younger deputy stepped forward and announced the case heading, the docket number, the judge's name, Winters, each syllable tapping a nail in. He offered the stack to Krista. She didn't take it. He set it gently on a side table just inside the door. Behind me, a lawn sprinkler kicked on somewhere down the street, ticking like a metronome. I felt older in the right way, measured, anchored, past the need to prove anything. The court officer opened the portfolio and began reading. Emergency freeze of accounts, including any transfers to entities connected to Devon Forrester. Immediate nullification of the unauthorized listing agreement. Notice of criminal complaint for forgery tied to the HELOC. Instructions for inventory and protection of household goods pending court order. You wouldn't think words on paper can halt muscles mid-lift, but the movers stopped like she'd hit a switch. Older men respect procedure because we know chaos costs. The officer's sentences were clean and final, no extra flourishes. She asked for IDs, logged names, and taped a copy of the order to my front window with the neatness of a teacher. Thomas texted. Also filed, dismiss DV claim, wait for me to note it. The younger deputy moved through rooms with a body cam light grazing walls I painted myself. I realized then the house didn't look smaller anymore. It looked defended. Paper, when it's the right paper, is a shield. Thomas arrived with a slim folder and the kind of calm that gets cases won. "Mrs. Harrington," he said, voice courteous, volume courtroom. "Regarding your domestic violence petition, Judge Winters reviewed our filings this morning." He turned a single page so the heading faced her. "Motion to dismiss, granted." He let the word sit. "Your husband has been offshore 7 continuous weeks. Badge logs, passport stamps, flight manifests, company affidavits." He wasn't gloating. He was laying a level across a crooked board. Krista found her outrage voice, the one that had worked on waiters and clerks. "He's controlling. He's always been—" Thomas lifted a hand, a small stop sign. "The court has spoken." Older men understand that phrase. It means the air has changed. An argument is just noise. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding and watched an accusation fold in on itself like wet cardboard. There was no victory rush, only clearance. One less lie taking up space. I looked at Devin, not like a rival, more like a lever. "There's one line I want on the record," I said to the officer, keeping my eyes on him. "In the messages, Plan B. It's just insurance money. He works a dangerous job." The officer was already writing. Thomas nodded once. "Older men call this naming the thing. Euphemisms give bad acts oxygen. Names take it away." Devin's face tightened at the corners. "You reading jokes now?" he said, a smirk straining for daylight. I shook my head. "I read intent." Krista shifted her weight like her shoes had changed sizes. The older deputy glanced at Devin the way men do when they decide who they'd rather turn their back on. The wind tugged at the taped order, but it held. "We'll provide the full thread to the DA," Thomas added. That wasn't a threat. It was a schedule. For the first time, I saw a sliver of tomorrow where I wasn't the only one audited. Devin opened his mouth, then closed it, then tried again with a voice he probably practiced in mirrors. "This is all a misunderstanding," he said, which is what men say when the receipt has their name on it. "Charm works like starter fluid, loud at first, then gone." The younger deputy asked for his ID. Devin patted his pockets, bought a few seconds, then surrendered a license. The officer compared it to her list and underlined something I couldn't see. Harold, steady as a fence post beside me, murmured, "Sometimes boys learn late the world has rules." I remembered being 25 and thinking confidence was currency. It is, until the bill comes due. I didn't grin. I didn't need to. The movers resumed under instruction, now careful, now slow, carrying things back inside like the floor might notice. The climax here wasn't a shout. It was a silence that didn't break. I felt it settle across the porch like dust after rain. Krista turned the taps. Tears came on cue, voice softening at edges, palms up like surrender. "Miles, Jake, I was protecting us," she said. "Safer investments. The house needed work. You're never home." Older men know that speech. Some of us have given a version of it when we've rationalized our own shortcuts. I didn't argue. I didn't cross-examine. I looked at the desk, half-angled back toward my doorway, and said a single sentence to the officer. "That piece is a family heirloom." Facts beat feelings when facts are organized. Thomas handed the officer a sheet, inventory highlights, serial numbers, photographs from 2 years ago. Krista's tears didn't bounce off anything. They just fell. Compassion tugged, because the past isn't imaginary. But I had learned a better word this week. Boundaries. The court officer nodded briskly. "Heirlooms stay pending inventory." Krista's shoulders dropped. The performance ended because the stage directions changed. The scene didn't ask for my forgiveness. It asked for my signature. The officer's tone turned practical, the same voice a nurse uses when it's time to change a dressing. "You have 30 minutes to gather personal items. Clothing, toiletries, medications," she said. "Everything else remains pending court inventory." A mover looked at his watch like he wished it could run faster. Devin muttered something about an appointment. The older deputy nodded toward a suitcase, not unkind. Men in uniform know dignity when they can offer it. Krista walked toward the bedroom she'd once painted without asking, and for the first time I felt the ghost of our house walk past me. Paint fumes and football Sundays and laundry tumbling warm into a basket. Harold's hand touched my elbow and then left it. Enough, not too much. The younger deputy affixed another copy of the order inside the foyer. The official paper caught the light and made a quiet flag. 30 minutes isn't long until it's all you get. Then it's a lifetime measured in drawers. The clock on my phone ticked toward the half hour, and the air changed. Not temperature, pressure, the kind of shift older men feel in their knuckles before the storm hits. Krista came back to the door with a small bag and eyes that finally saw beyond the performance. Devin hovered at her shoulder, his jaw set in the way of a man who just discovered he can't talk down gravity. The court officer checked her list, initialed a line, and stepped aside. "We'll be in touch regarding inventory," she said. No drama, no triumph, just process. That's when I saw it. The flicker I hadn't seen once in weeks. Not anger, not swagger. Fear. It passed quick, but it was real. I didn't chase it. I let it register like a gauge hitting the mark you predicted. Harold breathed out through his nose, a quiet yes. I looked at my front window, the taped order flapping once and settling flat. For the first time in a month, something stayed where it should. Courtrooms have their own weather. Ector County's felt dry and bright, sunlight catching on the seal above the bench. Judge Winters took her seat with the steadiness of someone who's seen every version of human mess and still trusts procedure. I sat beside Thomas, hands flat on the table the way older men do to keep them from tightening into fists. Across from us, Krista adjusted a bracelet that used to be a birthday gift from me. Her lawyer, Bradley, sorted papers like he could fan them into a new outcome. Winters looked over her glasses and spoke in a tone that would make a classroom quiet. "We'll keep this efficient," she said. "Efficiency is mercy when you're ready for truth." Thomas nudged a yellow pad toward me. 3 bullet points, nothing fancy. Banks, cloud, camera. He whispered, "We tell the story once, clearly." If you've ever watched a foreman start a safety meeting, you know the sound of grown adults getting ready. That's what this felt like. Thomas began with the bank. Thomas began. Dates, amounts, destinations, an arithmetic that left no room for romance. The judge followed each line with a finger, as if tracing a map out of a maze. Then came the cloud. Messages pulled from my own account, time-stamped, preserved, no edits, no spin. Brendan's affidavit read like a mechanic's checklist. Item, condition, verification. Finally, the camera. Still frames from my backyard, each annotated with time and object. Cedar bench, whiskey bottle, sweatshirt I'd worn to death and someone else wore like a victory lap. Older men like pictures because they don't argue back. As the exhibits stacked, I watched Bradley's pen slow. You can feel a case settle, like a truck easing onto a ramp with brakes that hold. Thomas kept his voice low and even, the way we talk to heavy loads. Don't swing, don't rush, let gravity do its job. When he finished, the courtroom wasn't angry. It was quiet, which is stronger. Krista had read plenty without blinking. Transfers labeled home repairs, the forged HELOC, even the realtor paperwork with my name bent to fit. But when Thomas pointed to the message in gray, Plan B, it's just insurance money. He works a dangerous job. Something changed. Her jaw worked once, twice, like she'd hit a word she couldn't swallow. Older men know that moment. The realization you can't charm physics. Judge Winters leaned forward. "Mrs. Harrington," she said, "do you understand what this implies?" The room didn't breathe. Krista's lawyer touched her elbow like he could lend her a spine. "That was a joke," she said softly, looking everywhere but the transcript. "A terrible one." Winters didn't smile. Jokes about death benefits are rarely funny in this venue. I felt a chill that wasn't air conditioning. It was the sensation you get when a thing you suspected stands up and says its name. The climax wasn't loud. It was a single sentence that didn't go away. Bradley tried to frame it as marital friction, hurt feelings, money misunderstandings, a husband absent by choice. It sounded like a speech built on drywall with no studs behind it. Thomas didn't object much. He let it sag on its own. Older men have learned to stop pushing what's already falling. When Bradley suggested the bank movements were reallocations, Winters lifted a page. 14 months, amounts calibrated just below internal triggers, she said, tapping a line. That's not reallocation, that's evasion. He shifted to the domestic violence claim and walked straight into our timeline. Badges, stamps, logs. Absence documented as if distance had a signature. The judge nodded once, as if scoring a test. In the pews behind us, a whisper started and died fast. Courtrooms don't like chatter, neither does the truth. Bradley looked to Krista again. She gave him nothing to hold. You can't build a house with air. You can't build a defense without facts. He sat down. He sat. Judge Winters removed her glasses and folded the earpieces slowly, like a teacher considering how direct to be. In 30 years on this bench, she said, I've seen many versions of marital breakdown. This is not impulsive. This is premeditated deception. The words landed with the clarity of a bell. She ticked through the elements, systematic transfers, forged instruments, unauthorized listing, and the chilling implication in the Plan B text. "The court is not here to determine criminal liability," she continued, "but I'm referring this record to the district attorney. Older men know a referral is not a promise, but it's a door." She squared the stack of filings until the edges matched. "We are here to dissolve a marriage and allocate assets in a way that reflects reality." Reality. That's all I'd wanted for weeks. No spin, no emojis, just wait and measure. Winters looked at me then, brief, human, before turning back to the page where numbers started coming home. The judge read the orders like she was laying out tools on a bench, each with a purpose, none for show. "All funds transferred by Mrs. Harrington are to be returned to Mr. Harrington," she said. "The residence in Odessa is confirmed as his sole property. Spousal support is denied." No flourish, no gavel slam, just sentences aligned as cleanly as fence posts in cured concrete. She continued, "Temporary control of household goods for inventory, immediate bar on further encumbrance, cooperation with the bank's fraud unit." Thomas wrote notes in the margin, little check marks that looked like breathing. I felt something in me loosen that had been clenched since the 3 a.m. text. You don't realize you've been holding a rope until you let go and your hands burn. Older men have learned that relief doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like an engine finally tuning to idle. The judge glanced at Krista. "You may speak with probation about next steps," she said. The days after were quieter, which is how you know a storm actually passed. Krista took a plea, no jail, 5 years probation, restitution, she'll pay a little at a time or not at all. I won't chase a nickel that costs $1 of peace. Devon disappeared the way patterns predict, off to another state, another glossy promise, another woman who doesn't know to check the exits. Older men spot patterns not because we're cynical, but because we've lived long enough to see the reruns. Harold sent a text now and then with Odessa news, weather, high school football scores, a photo of my porch swing back where it belonged. The DA called once with a polite update. The file was open. Files have their own time. I had mine. I changed passwords, closed loops, shook hands with bankers who prefer names to account numbers. In the mirror, I looked the same but felt heavier where it mattered and lighter everywhere else. I sold the Odessa house. Some homes keep you, some hold you back. This one had become a museum of scenes I didn't want to tour anymore. Older men learn to cut clean when cut you must. Harold helped sort the last boxes, heirlooms into crates, duplicates into donation piles, trash into the can with a satisfying thud. I walked each room once, touching door frames like they were old teammates. In the garage, I found the oil-stained rag I'd kept for years and finally threw it away. On closing day, I signed papers in a title office that smelled like peppermint. The notary smiled and slid me a pen on a tether. I signed my name the way I always have, downstroke sure, no tremor. Winterlight Holdings dissolved on schedule, assets moved where they belonged. I drove north as the plains gave way to pines and the sky opened. Some roads feel like doors. This one did. Montana waited with quiet I could trust. The cabin sits in a clearing where the wind makes its own music. Pine, creek, a porch swing I rehung with care. I poured a bourbon and sat with my boots on the rail like my father used to after a long week, letting the day settle into the wood. Older men keep certain rituals because they teach the body to stand down. Harold called to say the high school won by 3. Brendan mailed final paperwork, the clean kind that says closed. Thomas texted a photo of a blank courtroom with the caption, "On to the next." A recruiter rang with a consulting job up north. Decent money, short flights, respect for experience. "I'll think about it," I said, and meant it. A hawk drew circles over the meadow, unbothered by anything on the ground. I breathed in a way I hadn't since the 3 a.m. message. Justice hadn't made me young. It made me honest again, with myself, with the life I wanted next. Montana evening settles like a clean sheet over a long day. I sit on the porch swing I hung myself, pine air in my lungs, bourbon warm in my hand. Revenge, I've learned, isn't making them hurt. It's taking back what's yours and making sure the past can't happen twice. That's justice a man can sleep on. The phone rings. Consulting work up north, fair pay, short flights, a chance to use what 27 years taught me. I let it buzz once more, then answer the only way that fits tonight. "I'll think about it. Not tonight." I watch the hawk circle the meadow. The quiet answers back. If you've ever rebuilt after a storm, you know this feeling. The frame is square again. Before the credits roll, I want one thing from you. If you were me, what would you choose? 1. Justice. Build, protect, move forward. 2. Blood. Hit back, damn the cost. Type the number.